We've got Lindsay Kreslitzer from the Southern Area Local Health Network. Mount Gambier, Julie Forgan comes a long way for us to talk about Mount Gambier, which was the highlight of the evening. And then Anita Guha is going to speak about Callan. And then David Pearson will represent SA Mets quite capably. So I'm sure they'll have time for questions at the end. You're going to do it right at the end, guys, or you're going to do it at the end of each? Okay. So you can ask them questions at the end of each mini presentation. Often David's the one that gets the most questions because he's the one that knows all about the selection process. And AMSS has kindly agreed to film the presentation so that it can be put up on the MyUni website and AMSS website afterwards. So that's helpful for anyone who misses out or has to leave early or whatever. Okay, so I'm not going to stay, but good luck and go well for all the presenters. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, and thanks for coming here tonight. So I'm Kathy Wright, I'm the Medical Education Officer at LAMAC.
Kathy, you might need to use the lecture to the mic.
Oh, I don't need a mic. Can you hear me at the back? You can hear me? So I'm Kathy Wright. This lovely lady with me is Dr. Lucy Donovan, who's just finishing her internship at LAMAC. So I guess because this is your session, there's lots of information I could give you about LAMAC and how great it is, because all my colleagues here are going to tell you how good their hospitals and their regions are, and they are very good. But I guess we have to tell you our selling features at LAMAC. So essentially, I'll just go a quick overview, and then really what we want to do is hand it over to you, because you're the one that have the questions about your future, and so we'd like to talk to you about it. So LAMAC, as you know, it's in the north. It's not very far really from the city. Some people think it's a water bag job. It's not. When you're going to work in the morning, everyone else is going into the city. So it's a smooth ride out. When you're coming home at night, everyone else is going in the opposite direction, so you can get in. I got here from LAMAC, which went 30 minutes. So that's not bad, considering I left at 4:30. So I was here at 5. So that's pretty good. McEwen is a very progressive hospital. As you know, there are 3 key tertiary hospitals now in South Australia: the University of Adelaide, Flinders Medical Centre, and in the north, McEwen. So we've just opened up some new areas, and the redevelopment is, of course, quite massive, and it will continue to grow out there. So we have services that are growing, and it's a great opportunity for you to start your career off at a hospital that is also growing too. Lisa, do you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah, so I've had a really good year at the McEwen. I definitely think that a lot of people look to Royal Adelaide as their first option and then happen to work at the McEwen as a second option, but from all my friends that have worked there, no one's ever said, oh, I wish I had actually got to Royal Adelaide after they've worked there for a few months. So everyone who works there is always happy. In the intern year last year, I think only 2 people have stopped working there. One's working at the Wings and Kids and one's working at Flinders. So that's a pretty good retention of employees, I would say. But I think probably the best thing is if you have any questions, now's the time.
Yeah, so we've got a little window of time, so this is your opportunity. So any questions that you have of us? Yeah.
Say you did want to go to LAMAC, isn't it like only a 2/3 chance that you would get there, and 1/3 chance again at Modbury?
That's a good question. And we've had some discussions with SAMS about that. So essentially what we're advocating, if you want to come to LAMAC, then you can change your first preference. You will get the regions that you have to nominate, but then under the regions it will be your preference either for McEwen or for Modbury Hospital. Currently we'll have, in our intake just now, we have 35 interns. We're going to be increasing our numbers of interns, and I can't exactly say how many will have next year. Modbury have 17 interns. Having said that, I guess if we're oversubscribed, then I would suggest that some individuals may get Modbury. And that's not to say that that's not a bad thing, because Modbury is a very good training hospital as well. And also all of our specialties cross from McEwen across to Modbury as well. So the divisional head units up at Modbury and also at McEwen. We have talked about if individuals didn't get Lama Kiln as their first choice and ended up at Modbury, then they would get a rotation out to Lama Kiln as well. So that's a consideration that they have. So I guess what I would say is don't close off, because Modbury is a beautiful little hospital who are very supportive to their junior medical staff, have great education program. And, you know, very close to Tea Plaza, O-Bound Link out there. Shouldn't have
Yeah.
this.
I don't think anyone that was a Australian resident that put Lama Kiln first didn't get it. So if you're an Australian and you put Lama Kiln first, you should, based on last year, get it.
I was just hoping that you could clarify a bit more about once we apply for, say, the Northern Health Network, how we then go, if you were successful in getting that as your preference, then from that point, what the process is for applying for the different rotations or hospitals, and how that gets allocated to.
Okay, for the hospitals, David.
So we'll go through that later on.
Later on? Okay, sure.
Any other questions?
So I guess something else that most people want to know or ask about is overtime. So in all my rotations, the head of every unit has always said, put down every single hour you work. I've always put down every single hour I've worked. I've always been paid for it. I've never had a problem. And I know it's not the same at every other hospital. So that's definitely been not an issue at all for anyone.
What are the rotations that you do?
There are three core rotations that all interns have to do, which is medicine, surgery, and emergency medicine or rural GP. And thereafter that, then there are non-core rotations. Everyone has to do a service rotation, which is either nights or relieving. And then you have a choice of maybe you want to do an extra surgery, an extra medicine, maybe you want to do psychiatry or psychogeriatrics. And of course we have subspecialties under medicine as well, like neurology, cardiology, endocrinology.
So would everyone do an actual general medical?
Everybody will do a general medical rotation, that's for sure.
Part of the requirements of your intern year are 10 weeks of gen med, 10 weeks of surgery, and 8 weeks of emergency. So you get
Are there any rotations interns aren't allowed to do? Or pick?
Sorry?
Are there any rotations interns aren't allowed to do or pick?
Currently, what we have at LAMAC is we don't have ONG as an intern rotation. That's purely because it's down to funding, not because ONG don't want us. They have gynae, they don't do obstetrics. Having said that, the intern who's working in gynae certainly does get some exposure to obstetrics, but that's not supposed to be the focus. Yeah, and paediatrics as well. Paediatrics, the only exposure you would get is part of your ED, surgery on call.
Sorry if this gets answered later on, but in terms of rural GP placements, when you put down preferences, are you able to sort of streamline the area that you want to go, or is it really?
well, I guess the rural GP rotation is really popular at Lama Kiln. I got it, so I loved it. It was great. But I'd say, like, if you didn't want to do it, you definitely wouldn't get it. But if you do want it, you just need to write on that question, like, please.
More than please, because in Lucy's year there were 15 who wanted it and there are only 5 rotations. It's a very popular
Is there more
rotation.
than one location?
It's only for Canada for us, so under medical practice, which comes with residential accommodation, free residential accommodation. Other questions?
Yeah. As a medical international medicine, what are the chances of in this year, how many international students have actually gotten LAMAC?
I'll go through some data from this year later on for you. Right.
Thanks, Dave. We have a few. We have quite a few. Other questions? I guess if you come to last, oh, sorry.
I've heard that the protected teaching time at the LAMAC's quite good. Is that the same across all rotations, including surgeon stuff? Or is
It's Monday to Friday, 12:30 to 1:30 is protected time for intern.
So it depends on what rotation you're on, but there's teaching for everyone every Thursday in the hour with free lunch. When you're on Gen Med, you'll get Tuesday just for Gen Med, and all the medicine subspecialties, teaching lunch. Then Wednesday they're round with lunch. And they're on surgery, they have sometimes teaching on Tuesdays. And emergency has their own teaching as well. I'm not sure what that is.
Emergency teaching is every Monday, and that's joined together with Mobley Hospital. Probably some of you as medical students might have had exposure to that. That's a really good teaching tutorial every Monday afternoon, and that's about 3 hours.
Do all interns do an off-site rotation as well, or could you potentially be at LAMAC for all 5?
Currently, the only off-site rotations we have are the GP. We have a rural and an urban GP. All the others are on-site.
Yes. Yeah, so I think it costs $19 a fortnight for your pass. You don't get a specific space, and that's tax-free.
6-storey car park, security guard there in the evening. So, yeah, the cars are pretty safe and it's pretty secure to go to the car park as well. So that's also a bonus. What I have to say is that also we have a very young community of consultants who are very supportive of junior medical staff. It's a very friendly environment to work in. Those of you who have been out there on rotations, you can attest to that. Lots of people smile in the corridors at you and make you feel very welcome. For those of you who haven't been out to LAMAC and you want to come and check us out, you're more than welcome to come and spend some time with us. Thursday is always a good time to come when the intern tutorial is on. I'm going to leave some leaflets at the back, on the table at the back, so there is a contact number there. You're very welcome to come and spend some time with us, and we'll take you on a tour around the hospital as well, have lunch with the interns. But it's the best kept secret in South Australia. Coming out to LAMAC.
The other thing is, if you ever have any problems, like any difficult patient situations or, I don't know, problems with any consultants or anything, Kathy and Glenda will always respond to you very promptly. They might telephone you or arrange to have a meeting with you the next day. Which, I mean, I don't know what it's like at other hospitals, but you're bound to have something stressful happen during an intern year. And I think it's important to know that you're going to have someone that will respond really quickly to you and just meet with you whenever you want as sort of a mentor for you, not as your supervisor, but just there solely for you if you're upset or stressed about something. So that's been really helpful.
So thanks for listening to us. You're very welcome to come and see us out at LAMAC. What I will say to you is base your decision on where you go for your internship on good evidence and not on hearsay. That's all I have to say.
My name is Lucy Krasnitzer and I'm one of the medical education officers down at Southern Adelaide Local Health Network. So for those of you who don't know much about Southern Adelaide, we are a 500 plus bed teaching facility and we're based across multiple sites. And we're able to offer rotations across the whole spectrum of medical specialties as well as patient cohorts. And from the training medical officer unit perspective, we certainly do take pride in being an employer of choice within South Australia. So if you do internship at Southern Adelaide Local Health Network, so we operate across a true network model. We have so you won't be allocated to a home hospital, you're allocated to the network. We have a centralised training medical officer unit with outreach across all of our sites. As I said, we can offer a variety of clinical experiences and rotations. We have a regional manager of the training medical officer unit, a director of clinical training, medical education officers, myself and my colleague Therese Roberts is sitting here as well, to support all of you and advocate when needed on your behalf. This year we've got 74 interns and I expect that next year will probably be about the same. And this year we had 26 from Adelaide University, which is the highest we've ever had. Last year we had 15, and this year we've got 26. So you can see our split there. It's a good combination, it's a good group. No matter where you come from, we have a 5-day comprehensive orientation program for you to, if you're coming from Adelaide Uni, for example, that will orientate you to the facilities and get you all prepared to start work. So basically, you'll be, if you do your internship with us, you could be allocated to rotations across our sites. At any one time, we have 55 interns on site at Flinders Medical Centre, with 7 at the REPAT and 6 at Noarlunga. And we also have 6 general practice sites, which are Aldgate, Berry Medical Centre, that's also a general practice ED core rotation, Coorong Medical Centre, Jamestown, Murray Bridge, another GP ED placement, as well as Victor Harbour. So that's all of our sites. The way that I do the rotation allocations, and the way that I do that is based on the preferences that you submit to SAMET after you've been offered a position with us. So I really take it into account. I spend weeks agonising over giving you guys the best possible year that I can. So I use that. I obviously have to ensure that everyone meets their requirements for ARPA training, but I also try to make sure that everyone has a balanced and fair educational program for the year that also meets your interests for what you want to do. If you're interested in very popular rotations like paediatrics, that's probably our most popular, then you really should probably speak to me and submit some additional documentation. And they will be done between October and December. So these are the rotations that we have at Flinders Medical Centre. So acute care of the elderly, and I've put there how many PGY1 positions are in each of these rotations. The acute medical unit, cardiology, gastroenterology, general medicine, infectious diseases and dermatology, that's a split rotation. Respiratory stroke, we have obstetrics and gynecology, paediatrics, psychiatry at the Margaret Tobin Centre, our emergency department, relieving medical nights and surgical nights as service rotations. And I will say that not everyone has a service term during the year because there aren't enough places for everyone to do one. Cardiacs, and then looking at our surgical placements, we've got cardiac, colorectal, ENT and urology, that's another split rotation that we offer. Hepatobiliary, esophagogastric, orthopaedics, plastic surgery and vascular. So they're all the ones at Flinders. And these are our rotations at the REPAT and Noarlunga. So we have another split, gastroenterology and rheumatology at the REPAT, geriatric evaluation and management, general medicine, the acute geriatric unit, general surgery, psych and neurology. And we've got another ED down at Noarlunga, which has a high presentation of paediatric cases for those that are interested, general medicine, psych and surgery as well. If you do get offered a position with us, on the preference form, there's a whole range of questions there. It will ask you what your career interest is, why you've put things in specific order, but it also asks you about your leave, if you've got preferences for leave during internship. So if you know that, for instance, you are planning to get married or something, or you've got, you really want to go on a big trip, or you've got some idea about something you want to do at a specific time, then write it in there, because I absolutely use that in terms of determining what rotation you have at that time to try and facilitate you getting your leave. We really try and do that. Also, indicate your preferences about your rotation locations as well. So if for some reason you absolutely don't want to go to Noarlunga, it's too far away for you or something like that, write that in there. And that will just help me in turn. I can't guarantee it, but I want everyone to be happy, so I do consider all of that. I will say that not everyone goes off-site, so some people will have their whole year of internship at basically Flinders Medical Centre. Some people might go off-site for 1 term, and some might go off-site for 2 terms. Kind of depends on, obviously, the service needs, but also what you want. So some people really want to go off-site, they've got, whether it's a specific rotation or something that they want to do, and others want to be primarily based at Flinders Medical Centre. So there is some variation. There's no set rules about how we apply that. It's kind of based on what people want to do. This year, 61 of our interns got their first preference, and you can see the ones that missed out there. So the really popular ones were peds, infectious diseases, dermatology, and plastics, and all of those got their second preference. And everyone got at least 2 of their top 10 preferences this year, and most people got more than 2 of their top 10. So the way that our preference sheet works is we have about, I think, 39 different rotations or roughly, and you need to basically number those from 1 to 39. And you can put them in any order. So if you really, really want to do surgery, you can put all surgical placements from, you know, I think we've got more than a dozen surgical placements. Obviously you're not going to get 5 terms of surgery, so that impacts on basically how people, if someone's put 10 surgical placements, then that affects what number of their preferences they got. But having said that, I'll then go along to, okay, if you're really interested in surgery, what's your medical interest? And I'll try and give you your medical interest as well. Our educational program is aligned with the Australian Curriculum Framework for Junior Doctors, so that PGY1, PGY2 program. We have the 5-day orientation program. We also have weekly tutorials for interns, which are on a Tuesday at lunchtime, protected time, and we also provide lunch. We have clinical simulation as well. We'll do a minimum of 3 clinical simulation workshops during the year. We also do procedural skills training with medical grand rounds, and each rotation has a specific educational program there. In terms of, I guess, staffing support that we can provide, our regional manager, Mary Hatchard, is very supportive of interns. We have myself and Therese as the medical education officers. We also have 2 medical education registrars who are available to provide clinical mentorship and one-on-one training support. Our Director of Medical Services is Dr. Sharon Morton, and she is incredibly supportive of all junior doctors within Southern Adelaide Local Health Network. We have Directors of Clinical Training actually across our 3 sites. We have a Director of GP Training and HR support, and together we provide you with mentoring and pastoral care. We're regularly catching up to see how you're going, and we do provide a welcoming and supportive environment. Any questions, you can contact me on those details. The other thing that I just wanted to add as well, I know that there's been sort of some discussion. We had the session at Flinders Uni yesterday as well, and it's come up again today about hours and overtime. What I can tell you is that we have pretty much a directive in Southern Adelaide Local Health Network that all doctors are to report their actual hours of work and will be paid for their overtime. And if anyone was told not to record their hours, it would be a very serious problem. So please don't be concerned. Coming to Southern Adelaide Local Health Network, you will absolutely be remunerated for the hours that you work, and you will reward your hours on your timesheets and things like that. So don't worry about that. I'd like to welcome David Lamb to speak to you briefly. I'm sure some of you here would know David. David is an Adelaide University graduate who's been doing internships with us, and he's one of our staff. So I thought I'd just ask him to come he's a fabulous intern and just about to finish, and I thought I'd just ask him to speak to you about what it's been like, his transition coming from Adelaide Uni to Southern Adelaide.
Hi guys, I'm Dave Lamb. I'm one of the interns at Flinders. I thought I'd just start off by going through, these were my thoughts when I was thinking about where to apply for internship. And I've recently had a look back over that with some of my other colleagues who have just finished internship, and we all feel that these are still quite valid points. So, points to consider in order of importance. At the end of the day, first and foremost, it doesn't really matter too much where you intern per se, as everyone gets the same registration at the end of 12 months, and plenty of people change hospitals from intern to RMO year. Second of all, as has been said already, it's very much about doing the research and the math. So if, for example, you're interested in particular specialties such as O&G or PEDS or dermatology, ENT, then do the legwork. So approach each of the TMO units, write them emails and say, look, I'm interested in ENT or derm. How many intern jobs do you have per year? And then do the maths and statistics and see where is most advantageous for you to be if you're keen on that particular specialty. Similarly, if you are already known to a consultant from a student rotation or from a research project in a particular specialty, in a particular hospital, it would therefore make sense to then apply to that hospital so you can work for them and potentially get a mentor and a reference out of it for later. But as I said right at the start, at the end of the day, you do get the same 12 months registration after 12 months. So why I'm happy I chose Flinders, I'm just about to finish internship and I've been very happy with Flinders. First of all, they pay me every hour of overtime, it's been said already. Second of all, the TMO, Lindsay isn't kidding when she says she really takes your preferences into account. I was keen at the time when I applied for internship on surge and particularly ENT, but I was also keen on GP and potentially rural GP, so I was wanting to get as much ED and GP experience as possible, and Flinders, Southern Network was one of the, not all the other networks were were making it possible at the time for interns to do both an ED and a GP rotation, so you're doing the maths. That's one of the things that led me towards Flinders, and certainly they're not kidding, they gave me pretty much all my first preferences, so that was very good of them. Similarly, they also Lindsay also takes the timing of the rotations into account, so I had a friend who was very keen on paediatrics training, told TMO thus, and not only did they give her the peds intern job, they also gave it earlier on in the year so that she could have the references ready for when applications came out. Third of all, TMO are really, as Lindsay was saying, she really does take your leave preferences into account, so always open to the discussion, and if reasonable, and if she can at all do it, the TMO will give you leave when you want it. So for those reasons, I'm quite happy I stayed at Flinders. Things that because obviously the other big network that I was keen on at the time was going to the Royal Adelaide, because that's what we know coming from Adelaide University, and certainly there's a big sense of you're working with your mates over there, and certainly that was a big thing that swayed in favour of working at the Royal Adelaide. But these days, as the statistics are showing, more and more people, more of us are going to Flinders, and certainly I went with a big group of friends, and it was certainly if you're keen, it might not be a bad idea sort of coordinating as a group and going all over together. Any questions? Tish?
Do you have any trouble assimilating to the way things are done in Flinders in terms of procedure? Just the
define assimilating, Tish.
M60s and discharge forms, that sort of stuff. Is there any
Sorry, say again?
Just like, for example, organising discharges or transfers, is it different at all going from the Royal Adelaide to Flinders, and does it take long to adapt? Or is that basically just same old everywhere?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, having not worked anywhere else myself, but by chatting to my colleagues at other hospitals, there's certainly great number of trends, and it sounds to be quite similar. And certainly you do, everybody's quite supportive of Flinders, so you do get the help if you do ask for it, and if you're not sure, just ask. It's basically the bottom line. Any other questions? Yep.
Is this a ballpark time around which we'd have to put our preferences if we did get the Southern Network, for example?
I'll go through that later on.
How competitive is it to get a GP placement in Southern?
It depends. Are you interested in rural or urban? Not competitive. We have 30 GP placements per year, and we have 74 interns. Nearly half of our interns will do a GP placement.
And if you do have a lean towards something, like rural GP or urban GP, just make that well known even before the day starts, like right now. Write Lindsay an email right now.
I anticipate getting the email now.
Any other questions? Cool. I'll stick around for a chat afterwards if anybody wants to know a bit more about specific rotations or anything like that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, and I promise you I did not write that. I didn't ask him to say any of those things, so it's really, really nice to hear that David's been happy with his year so far.
Right now.
We pay him all his overtime, so don't worry.
Hi, as mentioned earlier, I'm Julie Forgan, the Medical Education Officer at Gambia, and I have some questions and Josh Mahadevan, who are interns, not this year, but last year. And they're very special people because they didn't pick Mount Gambier as their first choice, so I'm really curious to hear what they have to say about how they found the year and whether it had some positives, because it's easy to bring someone who wanted to come to your region, but someone who didn't necessarily pick it first is a good one, I think. What I've done is I've got a brochure here which explains all our rotations. It's also got some information of what previous interns have said about their rotations in Mount Gambier, who to contact, etc., which I've Denique's put on the website so that you can look at it at any time you like. Also, we have a special offer. So if anyone is interested in looking at Mount Gambier, because you know it's a long way to go and it's a big decision to make, that if you are seriously interested in coming to have a look, please contact me because we could possibly support you having a visit down to have a look at the region. I guess what I'd like to say is you do need a water bag to come to Mount Gambier. I know it's mentioned. 450 k's, for those who don't know where it is, it's 450 k's south of Adelaide and 450 k's from Melbourne. So, you know, if you're interested in visiting major capital cities from time to time, we're halfway between quite a good selling point. It can be a jolt to move away from family and friends, but sometimes it can be an advantage, so you might want to think about that too. I know we've had a few people kind of bust up some relationships and we're very keen to be down in Mount Gambier. And I guess the other thing, just quickly, I'll mention our rotations to you. So we at the moment we have 6 positions, so it's not like a large number. So we have rotations that are general medicine, general surge, and emergency medicine, and everyone does those. And then there's, actually no, that's not quite true, because we've now got an orthopaedic surge rotation as well, so there's some option there as a core term. And we've got non-core terms of anaesthetics and general practice, and the general practice is at Millicent, which is 50 kilometres away, and there's subsidised housing for that rotation. Anaesthetics is an area that a lot of interns are interested in because I don't think it's offered at any other site as an intern rotation. And just to give you an idea, the PGY2 and advanced training, we've got PEDS as PGY2, emergency medicine, Gen Med as PGY2 topics, and then there's an option to do anaesthetics and ortho in that year. And then we have advanced training in ED, ONG and anaesthetics again. So if anyone is following say an outcome pathway or a general practice pathway, you can actually do the whole lot rurally at Mount Gambier. So I just thought I'd throw that out there for those who might be interested in doing general practice in a rural setting and ONG sort of can change around to different locations. But on that note, I will hand over to Josh and Samia, and if we've got enough time, I'll put a little picture show up at the end.
Hello everybody, my name is Josh. I'm working at the QE now. I worked at Mount Gambier last year, having put it as my 4th or 5th preference. I went through the same thing that you guys went through now, being an international student, really anxious about getting a job after spending so much time in Adelaide, going through the numbers, playing with the stats. By the end of the day, it was all by chance. And initially, I didn't know what to expect. Went out there, not having lived in a rural area like Mount Gambier ever. I found that it's a very close-knit community. You make good friends in the hospital, and you do some excellent rotation. Now, I managed to do the anesthetics rotation. You get very good supervision. You do lots of interventions. I measured more than 40 intubations under supervision. You get to put art lines in, you get to put central lines in. You also get to learn how to use the ultrasound machine, which is excellent. So if anyone's really interested in anesthetics, I recommend going to Mount Gambier because you get really good, basic airway skills, basic airway management, really important skills if you want to do anesthetics. You also work close with consultants as well, which means that if you want to apply for a position in, emergency medicine or anesthetics the year after, you've got a consultant as a reference, and it's one-on-one teaching. With spinal blocks, I can't tell you how good it was. In terms of the other rotations, you get a range of presentations. You don't see patients that get really unwell, because when they get really unwell, you prep them and you send them to the city, but you get a good variety of patients in the general medical ward. You get palliative care, you get endocrinology, you get stroke, you get cardiac failure, you get all these patients on one ward, which is excellent in terms of preparing you. Going back, if I were to put my preferences again, I wouldn't hesitate to put Mount Gambier as my first preference, because the thing that was the worst was the anticipation of not getting a job. That was terrible. I think there were 4 international students there with me last year, and Sami is one of them. And all of us didn't hear about jobs and only heard later on. But at the end of the day, you get as much as you put into your internship. So it doesn't really matter where you go. As long as you put in the effort, you can learn a lot. And Sami to talk about the GP and ED placement.
So I'm Sami. I'm currently doing general training at Flinders Medical Centre, and I did my intern year at Mount Gambier Hospital as well. It was my 4th or 5th preference. And I found out at least 6 weeks or longer after everyone else found out about the job. So the anticipation was really nerve-wracking, but at the end of the day, I did get a job, and like Josh said, in retrospect, I've got no regrets. I got to do 2 medical rotations last year, so I spent a good 6 months in Gen Med, and the exposure I got, I don't think you'd ever get that in the city. In ward rounds, you would go from one patient who's got spontaneous bacterial peritonitis from peritoneal hemodialysis, and then the next one would be a PAL care patient, the next one's a COAD patient, the next one's an ONC patient. You see such good variety of patients, and it's only yourself and the consultant a lot of times. Maybe you have an RMO. So you work in really close relationship with the consultants and manage these complicated patients, just the 2 of you. So I think the medical rotations are really good for that. And sometimes you do get a fair bit of patients. One team can get up to 20, 30 patients at times, and ward round takes a long time, but you learn heaps. And on the days where it's not so busy, you get one-on-one bedside teaching with a consultant, and that, I think nothing replaces that. Those of you interested in general practice, you get to go to Millicent, which is 50 kilometers away. They pay you for your petrol and they give you a house there, so don't worry about that. But in Millicent, you get a really good taste of what rural GP is like, and you're also rotating in Millicent District Hospital, where you're on call with the general practitioners there. A lot of times they rely on you to hold forward at the hospital while they go home or go to the clinic to do other things. So you're pretty much the only doctor in a 25 or 30 bed hospital, and you're the first person to see any patient that comes into the emergency department over there. So it can be daunting, but you really learn, and it makes you study, it really makes you hone your skills in assessing patients, deciding how sick they are, deciding who you're going to treat here, who you're going to transfer down to Mount Gambier, who might eventually get transferred to ICU in Adelaide. But it's really good in terms of managing patients and exposure. So that's a good, those of you wanting to do GP, I think Mount Gambier is really good. Working in ED is also amazing. I think as an intern, I was part of the resus team. You get allocated to any of the resus roles, including airway, especially if you've done anesthetics, which you'll never be able to do in the city. And I actually got to be part of a resuscitation team where you're full-on involved in part of the resuscitation. So I think the exposure is nothing like you can get anywhere else. You just need to keep an open mind about it, because a lot of people think that working in the city gives you the best kind of experience rotations, but all 5 of us, 6 of us who went to Mount Gambier got jobs for the next year, and all of us got the jobs we wanted. So it's not a bad place for any of you to consider, certainly. The cons are the ones that you probably know about, and are the ones that you're probably thinking about, the reasons that you don't want to go there. It's the distance, it's a small hospital, you don't get to work with the bosses that you want to, but at the end of the day, like Dave said, you still get the same registration, you still apply through the same process for the next year, and all 6 of us got a job. So have a think about it, don't dismiss it at all. In fact, consider going there, and I don't think you regret it. Awesome.
I know car parking hassles, so car parking. Sammy and Josh they could walk to work in what, how many minutes? But they slacked and they drove, so that was like 5 minutes. So there are some advantages, no traffic. Yes?
In my rural GP rotation this year, some of the doctors were trained in some of the basic imaging techniques and some weren't. What is the exposure as interns with regards to doing your own basic imaging on patients? Or are you reliant on on-call sonographers?
Do you mean like x-rays and stuff?
Yeah.
So the GPs at Millicent have access to x-rays on a Tuesday and a Thursday at Millicent. They don't run the machines. There's Benson Radiology that do that out at Millicent Hospital. And for the really sick patients at the hospital, we have to ship them off to Mount Gambier if they need urgent imaging.
And that's on site, yeah.
Yeah, so Tuesday and Thursday is on site. So you have to be selective about who you...
At the Mount Gambier Hospital though, are you taught any of the basic skills, like the certificate in doing your own imaging or not?
No, you're not taught any skills like that, but you do learn, if you're interested in ultrasound, the anesthetic consultants are very happy to teach you ultrasound techniques. But you can apply, you can do a course, let's say in Melbourne or something, while you're doing internship at the same time, like an online course or something. And the other thing that you will have, your overtime is paid, but you don't have too much overtime. So you will have time on your hands to, develop other skills or take on other courses if you want. And the scenery is beautiful.
The other thing too I forgot was that the Mount Gambier Hospital is currently undergoing a major renovation, and so even though it's only 15 years old, it's having a huge extension. So there's additional spaces in ED. There's going to be a whole new mental health wing and rehabilitation area. So it's having a major refurbishment. So it'll be state of the art. Have I got time to just show the little pictures? Just quickly. 2 minutes. I'll flick through them. Any more questions while I do that? Here's a little map. Oh, I think it just, I'll click it. 5 questions on what? Oh yeah, that's the back end of it. It's been extended. That's how far it is from the car park to the we have quite a lot of simulation equipment, so you can end up having a serious amount of simulation equipment. So we do a lot in hospital as well as at a rural clinical school. This is a rural clinical school which is just behind the hospital, and I actually work for the rural clinical school and provide the education support to the hospital. So here's some of our training rooms. Some of the quite a lot of community work too, so we have a lot of school presentations and working career sites and things like that. That's the car park. Move games with no fence, it's so good. Drive up that side there. Now, here we go. New area. Recognise those labels? We're all very close. Beach is, 30 k's away? You go doing your sanctum thing. Walking in the bush. Going to the bar. Having fun and teaching on the run. Finding volcanoes. More bars.
Hi, my name is Greg.
Hi, my name's Julie. We'll get rid of that. So, come join us.
That's so boring.
you hear me if I yell from here? Can you hear me from the back? Yeah. My name is Victor Buha, and I'm the Director of Clinical Training at the Royal Adelaide Hospital. And I'm delighted to have with me Alicia Ma. We're going to talk about the Central Adelaide Local Health Network, CAN, because, as you know, training is between Queen Elizabeth Hospital and Royal Adelaide Hospital is now going across CAN. When you apply, you'll be applying to the Central Network, but you will be asked to nominate your base hospital, because every intern will have a base hospital. So it'll either be the Queen Elizabeth or the Royal Adelaide Hospital. And when you ask for your base hospital, the way the allocation will take place is that if, say, that Hospital A and Hospital B, and one hospital is oversubscribed and one hospital is undersubscribed, whoever's put first preference for the undersubscribed hospital will automatically get that as a base hospital, and the rest of the people who have applied to the oversubscribed hospital will be randomly allocated between the two hospitals. Does that make sense? Can everyone follow that? Okay. Now, in CAN, you will spend at least one rotation outside your base hospital. So everybody will have at least one rotation outside the base hospital. And that might be to any number of places. It may be to Women's and Children's Hospital. If people have applied with peds and obstetrics, it might be across the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. There are 4 rotations that are swapped between the Queen Elizabeth and the Royal Adelaide Hospital. So there will be a swap across the 2 hospitals for that rotation. It might be to a country general practice. We have one urban general practice, which is Christie's Beach, or it might be to Hampstead Centre or to Glenside for psychiatry. So everyone will spend at least one rotation outside the major institution. Now, occasionally, you might have 2 rotations, and that might be if you have preference the Women's and Children's Hospital and a general practice rotation, for example. You might potentially get that, okay? So that's the way the allocations have worked. Now, how do we allocate? What are the rotations that are offered? So these are rotations that are on offer at the Royal Adelaide campus. We have a brochure here that if you want to take and have a closer look at, you can do that later on. So these are the rotations that are offered at the Royal Adelaide campus, and these are the offers that are available at the Queen Elizabeth campus. So as you can see, there's a very wide variety of rotations available at both campuses, and it will certainly, hopefully, give you a foretaste of a variety. As you know, you'll have 5 rotations, and you'll get a real mixture of rotations that you can ask. Now, how are rotations allocated? Once you've been allocated to your base hospital, the base hospitals will undertake the allocation of the terms or the rotations. And what will happen is that you will be asked to nominate your preferences. And you'll be asked to nominate your medical preferences, your surgical preferences, your ED preferences, and your non-core preferences. You'll be asked to rank each of those groups separately. And then you'll be asked, what is your absolute dead dying one preference? What's your absolute top preference that you die to receive? Okay, so you'll be asked to nominate that. Because sometimes you might allocate your surgical preference and your medical preference and your ED preference, but we don't know that you really want to do plastic surgery, and we might have given you a top medical preference and your second surgical preference. Okay, so for that reason, we've asked you to also nominate your absolute to die for preference, and the vast majority of times you will get your to die for preference, and then you'll get as many of your top preferences in the other categories as you can. Okay? I have to say that it'd be fair to say that the one that is a little bit difficult for everybody to get is pediatrics. Because although we now have, I think about 20 or 25 pediatric terms, there's often a great oversubscription for that. So think about it strategically and think about what is your absolute dead dying preference. And we will try and do as much as we possibly can to allocate it. It takes Helen and myself in the roster office at the Royal Adelaide, for example, and I think it's a very similar process at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. It takes us about 2 full days of trying to map 5 preferences for 93 interns. So you can imagine that we look at each individual rotation as closely as possible to map your requirements. Okay. In terms of what else we have to offer, these are the ones that are swapped between the Royal Adelaide and the Queen Elizabeth. And if you look at the training unit personnel, there's equivalent roles at both hospitals. Both of the postgraduate medical units are extremely concerned about intern welfare, and we do a lot of work with interns to try and support them and give them the kind of pastoral care that is important for doing an internship. So our doors are always open, and we give you as much support and assistance as we can possibly give you. You have also a lot of training things built into your internship. So for example, everyone will do 2 half-days of simulation training at the Royal Adelaide, and there's also simulation training available to interns at Flinders Hospital. You'll get procedural training. Both hospitals have intern-based weekly teaching sessions, which are not really important from the point of view of teaching, but it's also an opportunity for interns to get together and meet up with your colleagues, because often you're so busy during the day that it can be hard to meet up with your colleagues, and the lunchtime meetings provide that opportunity. And both hospitals have got a very wide variety of other educational sessions that interns are very welcome to go to, like the grand rounds, the ED department, and the surgical units also run intern-focused training sessions for especially designed for interns with regard to surgery and ED, but there's also a wide variety of other things that are available. And during your country general practice terms, you will also get training from the GPs in the country. So enormous amount of variety of educational sessions that are available, and interns have a very direct say in their education, because you drive what the sessions are. Each year we have an intern panel that decides on the training program that the interns do. So that's important. And I'm just going to hand over to Alicia, who was an intern with us last year and is currently a BPT with us, to give you a flavour of what her internship experience is like. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I was an intern at the Royal last year, as Mitra just said. Had a really, really good year. I chose the Royal specifically because I was familiar with the hospital as an intern, but it's such a bustling, chaotic, big place that I wanted to challenge for my internship, which was effectively why I did it. So, contrary to popular belief, the pastoral care there is actually very, very good. The interns become very, very tight as a cohort, and you get to know your registrars, and being such a big training hospital, there are so many different doctors from all various levels of training that you get involved. You form really good relationships, form really good teams, and that actually helps not just you learn, but helps on a day-to-day work basis, and gives you a lot of social outlets as well over the year. So there is the general medical, surgical, and the ED core terms, but there's a huge number of other terms which keep a lot of variety in the hospital, but it also means that there are heaps of subspecialties for you to choose from if you are interested in pursuing a particular specialty pathway. And there's a huge research basis as well, so if you're interested in going towards a specific specialty, then it's a good place to come if you can start linking into the particular specialties and consultants that you need to give you a hand from that point of view. I did end up doing one of the GP unit terms. I went to Clare, had a great time. It was combined GP ED, so I didn't particularly want to do ED in the city, which is why I went out there and had a great year. And from everyone I spoke to, that it was a really good experience as well across the various sites, and there's a huge number of them to choose from as well. It is a challenging year. You do work hard. I think you guys all wanted to know about overtime, and depending on your specialty, you may or may not be paid overtime. But either way, you kind of do what you need to do to get the work done to look after your patients, and even if there is some kind of discrepancy as to whether you're going to be paid overtime or not, you look after your patients well, you work well, and you work as a team. But unfortunately, that's not something that they can guarantee you at some of the specialties of the role. From a peds-ology point of view, as Dr. Griers has said, it's very difficult to guarantee that you'll get one of them either, but some of our interns last year who didn't get peds and ology rotations still ended up getting some at Women's and Kids and at Flinders this year as well, so it doesn't certainly lock the doors if you don't manage to get both rotations as an intern. Do you guys have any questions about the RAR specifically? Yeah.
I know you can't guarantee different specialties over time. What kind of junior medical officer representation is there then, if we're at the wings of each department?
Can I just say that the hospital's official policy is that if you're here for genuine overtime, it should be paid. Okay. I have to say that some units are more strict about it than others, and now they've got the way the timesheets are pre-filled. That's to try and make sure that your rostered hours are adequately entered. But the official hospital policy is that you're here
for a legitimate reason after in non-roster time, that should be paid. That should be entered, allocated, and paid. Okay. Now, in terms of what kind of intern representatives there are, 2 interns each year are elected what are called intern advocates, whose job is to liaise with medical administration on behalf of the intern pool to talk about these industrial matters. But there are also intern representations on education committees, and there are intern representations. The RMO Society is a very active one. It's also one that's engaged in things like industrial matters as well.
At the end of the day, a lot of the consultants do understand if you need to, and even if some heads of unit or some of the consultants in some units don't agree, it doesn't mean that you won't necessarily get what you're entitled to.
Yeah.
So for the popular rotations such as PEDS, is there anything else that we can do to sort of improve our chances of getting a rotation there?
The way we allocate it is, as I said, is there drop dead one that you absolutely have, you fill that section in where it says, what do I absolutely want to have? And we will do as much as we can. We don't, I have to say, look at things like, the PEDS supervisor that was as a student has recommended. We can't take that into account, because if every unit did that, we would have a nightmare job, more than already that we have. What we try and do is try and make as much as we can, give people as many of their top preferences as we can. So for example, just to give you the way we do it, we might start off giving medicine allocations first, and look at everyone's first medical allocation. If everyone's got their top first medical allocation, we then start reverse order in the alphabet for surgical allocations. Does that make sense? And then when we come to ED, we start from the middle and work sideways. So that we try and give everybody a go at their preferences. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Suzanne.
So having said, keeping that in mind, roughly how many people actually got their first preference? And I know Flinders said it was something like 60 out of 74.
Of the 93?
Yeah.
Helen, can you remember? I think almost everybody got probably about 2 or 3 missed out on their very top first preference, and that was because they wanted PEDS. It's probably about 2 or 3. I mean, if you talk about the one that is absolutely the top preference, I think about last year from recollection, I must say I didn't keep the numbers, but about, probably out of the 93 interns, about 3 or 4 missed out on their very top sort of preference, because that's because of we had about 25 or something PEDS rotations and about 29 people applied for PEDS.
So you take preferences for what you do and what you do. Is there like I would die if I did this?
If I did, I mean, I would like reverse one. Let's put it this way. Some people, for example, got med nights or got nights, and it was their 7th preference. Those service terms, someone needs to do them. Okay? So you might get a preference that you don't like. Surprisingly, a lot of people put nights first preference, second preference in their non-option term, because they get the week on, week off. So that's quite nice. So yeah, there might be, out of your 5 rotations, okay, you would probably get within the top preferences in your 4, and there might be a 5th one that you may miss.
So there's no option to say,
I will die if I get that preference. But if you have a very cogent reason, so for example, someone might say that I have got we have to be very careful when I say things like this, but might say, I have got a child and I'm a single mother and I don't want a country rotation because of that, well, of course take that. See, there's a very cogent reason that, not just because I don't happen to like that rotation, okay, but if there's a very valid and cogent reason why a certain rotation might be of great difficulty, we will of course take that into account, and we did. Does that make sense?
Is there any swapping of rotations between
have swap, but we discourage that. It is an enormous amount of difficulty to try and make sure that everyone gets their mandatory medical term, their mandatory surgical term, their mandatory ED, GP term. In addition to that, we have to take into account things like, for example, this year the 93 intern, 56 were University of Adelaide graduates, we had about 20 or 20 odd from Flinders, and we had another 10 or something, 10, 12 from interstate. So we have to take into account things like matching a local graduate with someone from another hospital so that they can support each other on a unit and give each other information. We, for example, have to take into account that we don't send someone who's new to this hospital off campus for their first rotation. We have to be very careful that we don't put someone who's new to this hospital on nights. So by the time we've built all that kind of complexity into the equation, the rostering becomes quite complex, and once we've done it and we've bedded it down, unless there's a very strong reason for swaps, we don't encourage swaps. However, having said that, there have been people who have swapped. It has to swap like for like, so you can't swap psychiatry for gen med, okay, because that will take into account in your mandatory terms, so we have to swap like for like. We do look at it. All swaps have to go through my office. I have to countersign every swap before the roster office will allow it. But we don't encourage it. Does that make sense?
If you preference the QE as your number one, are you more likely to get a rotation within the children through that?
I can't answer that question. The answer is not, probably not. Probably not, because again, the QE will have exactly the same rotation through that.
Are there any timing preferences for rotations, or is it just
Again, we will look at it if there's a very cogent reason. We can't take everybody's timing references into account. Everybody's like, I want to do this at this time because my mate is doing it. It's difficult. But if, for example, like, as Lindsay said, I'm getting married and I have to, my wedding is at that time and I want my leave then, or I want to have some rotation then, we will certainly look at reasonable and cogent requests. Anything you want to ask Alicia? She's the horse. There's the horse's mouth. Nobody believes anything I say, but I'm sure they'll believe what Alicia says.
Yep. What's the preferences like for annual leave?
Okay. At the beginning of the year, you'll be asked to nominate your annual leave preferences. The ED term carries a mandatory 2-week annual leave in ED. Okay. And I think relieving also carries a mandatory relieving 1 week within the relieving term. Okay. So those leagues are built in. Okay. Most people are given 3 weeks leave during the year. And the reason we've given you 3 weeks leave is because we want to leave 1 week available for sick leave if you necessarily get sick, so that you don't miss out on your registration of 47, 48 weeks. Okay. So most people will be given 3 weeks leave during the year, and then the rest of your leave will be taken at the end of your intern year, between your intern year and annual leave. No more questions?
I'm back again. I just thought I'd introduce Rebecca Shower, who I'm sure many of you know. Rebecca's just going to speak about Southern Adelaide just for an extra couple of minutes. She was coming with David and got stuck in traffic, so considering she made it all the way here, I thought it would be good to let Rebecca speak for a couple of minutes.
I'm sorry guys, I'm late, I was stuck in traffic. Anyway, so I know most of you, I think, and so I went to Flinders. It was a choice that it took a while for me to make, but in the end I thought I'd go for something different, but still a tertiary hospital. And Flinders had a really good variety of rotations, and there was heaps of good feedback from previous years. I think last year was the first year that a lot of Adelaide people ventured into Flinders, and before that was a bit of an unknown space, and so I thought I'd give it a go, and I've loved it since. So I started off in, I loved Ra as well. I've done a lot of my rotations as a student there, but I thought I'd go somewhere different. So, you know, it's up to you to balance out what you like. So at Flinders I started off on orthopedics, and I think everyone, and I'm now on peds. So if you want to do peds, I I'm sure Women's and Children's is great, but I've never done peds as a student properly, but now at Flinders, peds rotation there is 1 week of med, 1 week of surge, so you're exposed to both pediatric surgery and pediatric medicine at the same time, so if that's what you want to do, seriously consider it. I didn't have to work very hard to get the rotation. I think Lindsay's been really good to all of us in allocating our rotations. I started on orthopedics. I think I had the impression that Flinders kind of babied you a little bit. That's the impression I got. I'm not quite sure what your impression is, but that's not what I got when I got there. There was a lot of expectation from you as an intern. You do exactly the same thing. You have to ask for consults, and different people, different reactions to you asking for consults, and you had lots of expectations, but I found that everyone was really supportive and really helpful. Like I could call up my consultant if I was really concerned, but all my regulars were really helpful, and always go for coffee and things like that, so everyone was really lovely. And there was lots of systems set up at Flinders to help make your life a bit easier on cover. Like there's always this electronic task board, so you don't get paged about gel codes, drug charges and things like that, so you can prioritise yourself on your jobs, which makes your life a lot easier. There's a whiteboard. So there was a talk by one of our safety people, Margaret Walker, which was really nice to explain how to make your intern's life not stressed out by all when you have to do a job, being paid constantly about that. But yeah, and I got paid for all my overtime as well. In order to answer about the industrial relations thing, there's a JMO forum, which I'm part of, and there's huge discussion there and letters sent out regarding overtime, and Sesma was involved as well. So that's in the works, but it's something that's been going on for a while, and it's not something that's going to be solved really quickly. But just to say, I'm loving my time in Flinders, and I've got all my rotations that I really wanted, and most people have. Yeah, and I eat ice cream a lot on peds, and have free massage, which is fantastic.
Okay, I'm David Peterson. I'm from the Medical Education and Training Unit in the Department of Health, and we undertake the intern allocations, and I'll spend a little time going through the application process and also how the allocation happens, and I'll also give you some data from these current interns about how many we've gone where and things like that. Just to tell you a little bit about SAMET, the Medical Education and Training Unit. We're actually a health advisory council established by the Minister. We report to the Minister of Health, and our major role, our reason for being, is around accrediting the positions that you go into as an intern on behalf of the medical board, to make sure that they will meet the medical board requirements, so you will actually be able to then achieve your general registration at the end of your intern year. We also do a number of other things on behalf of the Department of Health. We provide some education support, we do some medical workforce planning, and the other thing we do is the allocation of intern and also some of the RMO postgraduate year 2 positions on behalf of the South Australian healthcare system. Your intern year, in case you don't know, and it's probably been gone through already, consists of 47 weeks of satisfactory supervised practice, including, and you have to include those that medical, surgical and emergency medicine terms, as well as a range of other non-core rotations in other areas. If you want to meet the requirements for general registration at the end of the year, which everybody generally does. In order to apply for an intern position, there are some eligibility requirements. First of all, you need to be an Australian or New Zealand graduate in the last 3 years. You need to be either an Australian citizen, permanent resident, or a temporary resident who will be able to get an ongoing temporary residence visa in some form. So if you've got on your visa, for example, that you have no rights for further visas, then that's going to be an issue in terms of getting ongoing, if you're doing an intern position. You also need to meet some English language skills requirements, which I'll go into later on. And these positions are for 12-month contracts beginning in January 2015. If for some reason you want to delay the start of your internship, you can't apply through this. You can't generally start mid-year. You can take a year off and then apply the following year if you want to. But these positions start in January 2015. As you know, you're allocated, you're allocated to the local healthcare network. because that is the administrative business structure of the South Australian healthcare system, and you have heard quite a lot about the different employment rostering and rotation, home hospital arrangements between the different LHNs tonight. When we come to do allocations, we do it in order of what are called allocation categories, or in some states they're called priority groups. The priority groups are, the group ones are local South Australian graduates, and the first people that are offered positions are those who are Commonwealth supported or on a South Australian bonded medical scholarship scheme. We then move down to those who happen to be full fee graduates from Australian citizens and permanent residents, and typically they are people who may have gained permanent residency partway through their degree. We then move to the interstate or New Zealand graduates. Those who did Year 12 in South Australia are given some priority to come back to South Australia. Then after that, we move down to the Australian temporary residents, the international students. And again, we go South Australian graduates, we give preference to them, interstate graduates, and then finally, if there happen to be any positions left, those who are from an overseas campus of an Australian university, which is Monash, has a campus in Malaysia, and University of Queensland has a campus in Oshner in the US. If you're a Category 1.1 applicant, South Australian graduate, Commonwealth supported, then you are actually guaranteed an intern position in South Australia under an agreement by the Council of Australian Governments. In terms of the process, what needs to happen is that first of all you will need to complete your application. Once you do that, we verify that application, we check everything you've told us about yourself. We will make the allocation at a point in time after that, notify you. You will need to accept or decline that offer, and then at a later point in time, and it's usually, it may be a couple of months later, the employment contract will come out from the LHN. SA Med is not the employer, the LHN is the employer, and they provide the contracts to you. But there is often a significant delay, especially if you receive your job offer when the offers first come in. There will be a couple of months delay before that actual contract comes out. In order to make application, you need to set up your account. Go to our website, samet.org.au. If you have trouble remembering it, there are some bookmarks up the back with both the website and the important dates on them. I know bookmarks are really old school and you don't use books anymore, but it's all we've got. We haven't yet got an app that just tells you the dates. You'll need to set up an account, provide your name, your email address, create a password for yourself. You'll then need to go and log in and provide all the information which I'm going to go through in a minute. We will also send you a security code in an email. That's not your password, it's different to your password, and it's there just to prove that you are a real human being, that you're not an automated bot that crawls around the net and fills in databases randomly with garbage, and that this is a real person, and that your email address, you've actually entered it correctly. If you don't get that email from us with a security code, you won't be able to finalise your application, and you'll need to ring us and say that you didn't get the security code. We can reissue it to you, make sure that you do get it. You need to provide information about yourself, who you are, where you live, phone number, email address. You will also receive from the university here an intern placement number that's issued by APRA or the medical board to all final year medical students across Australia. It's a unique number to you, and that's a way of tracking individuals who apply to different states and territories, because you have one number, and if you apply to New South Wales you have to put that same number in. It enables us later on, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on, it enables us to identify people who accept positions in, say, South Australia and New South Wales and Victoria, so that we can then go to them and say, look, you've got 3 intern positions, that's great, you can really only work in one of them, which one is it going to be? That number, the university, the APRA supply that number to the university will supply that to you. We don't have that number, the university has it. You'll need to provide information about your residency status, your proof of English language, and a CV. The CV is not used in any part as part of the application. We don't look at it and say, you know, yeah, you look like you're a really good applicant, so you can go here. It's provided to the LHN afterwards so that they know who you are, what your interests are, and those sorts of things. We may look through it if we're trying to verify some of the information that you've given to us. We may look through it to see what you've said in there as well. you will need to put all of the local health networks in order of your preference. So if you want to go to Northern as that's your first choice, put it as number 1. If you want Southern as your second choice, put it as number 2, down the 4 local health networks. Think about all of your preferences. Don't just think about the first one, because not everybody will get their first preference. Every year we do get someone who says, oh, well, I didn't get my first preference, but I didn't consider my second preference very carefully. I'd like to change it. Once you've submitted it, that's it. So think about the order that you really want them. The one that you want to go to least of all, put it at the bottom. We will also, I guess, do some special considerations. We'll consider some exceptional circumstances. First one is if you do want to do your internship on a part-time basis, then put an application in. As part of your application, indicate that you want to do it part-time. There are no guarantees that you'll be able to do your internship part-time. But what we will do is we'll go out to the local health networks, especially those your preference high, and we'll say, will you consider taking an intern on a part-time basis? If you have someone who can job share with you, if you know of someone, that may help your case, because then they can share a position. You would need to realise though that you need to be doing the same or very similar type of rosters within the hospital. But there is no guarantee, but it will be considered if you want to do your internship part-time. Think about also that doing internship part-time is actually quite difficult as well for you as a person, because there are some rotations where it's almost impossible to do it part-time. It's going to take you a lot longer to do it and things like that. The other is if there's some exceptional circumstances such as major health issues, or if you have dependents or partners who can't relocate to regional South Australia, for example, then you need to put that in. You need to provide some evidence. If it's health issues, we would need to see something from your doctor to indicate that you needed to remain here in Adelaide, or you needed to be close to a specific hospital if that was to occur. We assess them all on a case-by-case basis, and then we'll notify you if they are approved. And one of the things to bear in mind that transport within the metropolitan area is not considered grounds for special consideration. Adelaide is a relatively small city, and so if you happen to be allocated to Lyman Hospital and you live closer to the city, you will need to ensure that you can get out there in whatever way is required. So transport within the metropolitan area is not grounds for special consideration. You have to provide a number of documents in order to substantiate what you've told us, to substantiate your residency status, passport, copy of your passport, citizenship certificate if you've got one. If you don't have something like that, a birth certificate, but we prefer a passport because a birth certificate doesn't always actually indicate your citizenship. If you don't provide a passport, we'll probably come back and ask you for one. Now we recognise that there are some people who may not have one, so they'll come and talk to us about what else.
So if you put in a passport, do you also have to put in your citizenship too?
No, just one piece of evidence. And none of these documents have to be certified as being correct or original or whatever. Just scan them, take a photo on your phone, send it in. We will do checks, further checks, come back to you if we think there is a problem. But when you do come to accept a contract with your hospital, the hospital may require you at that time to provide original documents or certified copies at that stage. But when you do your application, they do not have to be certified by a GP. English language skills is an issue every year. The medical board, when you come to put your registration in, will require you to show evidence that you can speak English at a level appropriate for a medical person in Australia. When it comes to your internship, we actually require you to demonstrate that at the time you make your application, because every year, we brought this in 2 years ago. Before that, what we would have is every year there would be a number of people who would get to the end of the year, they've been allocated to a hospital, but they can't get registration because they can't demonstrate their English language skills to the medical board. So we've brought it in that you have to apply, you have to be able to demonstrate this at the time you make an application, which is by the closing date of applications. The way that you do that, if you undertook your secondary schooling, your final years of secondary schooling in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, UK, Ireland or South Africa, then you need to provide us with a copy of you know, your SACE certificate or a high school transcript or a letter from your high school or something similar to that. If you did not do your final years of secondary schooling in one of those countries, then you need to provide a copy of an English language skills test that's approved by the medical board at the level that they require. For IELTS test, it needs to be the academic stream, and you need to get a score of 7 or higher in every one of the 4 categories in one sitting. OETS is similar. If you haven't done that, you need to get in and book that straight away, because there is quite a lead time with some of them. Now, if you did one in order to get into university, English language skills test, and you've been enrolled in study continuously since then that's also acceptable. Otherwise, it has to be within the last 2 years of being enrolled in study. The other thing to remember is that the medical board takes the view that is the physical location of where you did your schooling. It is not the fact that you might have done the South Australian Certificate of Education, the SACE, in Malaysia. They won't accept that because Malaysia is not one of those 7 exempt countries. So it has to be the physical location. We had, a couple of years ago, we had a girl who wanted to apply to us. She was an Australian citizen, had grown up in Australia. Partway through her schooling, her parents moved to Europe and Switzerland. She attended a English language school in Switzerland that was run from the UK by, I think it was Cambridge University. The medical board won't accept her Year 12 certificate because it was not one of these exempt countries. So they are very strict on it. And every year we have people who argue with us and say, well, I know they'll accept it, but we know that they won't. So it needs to be one of those exempt countries, or do an IELTS or OETS test. Copy of your university transcript. I'll come back to you. Copy of your university transcript. Doesn't have to be certified. Print out from online or a screenshot from online or whatever. We just want to know that yes, you can enroll in university, yes, you can do medicine, and yes, you're going to graduate at the end of this year, or expect to graduate at the end of this year. And also, as I said, a copy of your CV. Question?
It was just to do with the transcript. Is that okay if it's just up to an including 5th year? Like, we don't have to get a new one for 6th year?
No, that's fine. But you can just go online and print it off or whatever as well. Whatever, it doesn't have to be certified. It just needs to be, you know, look like it's a proper university one. Like you can get online. It doesn't have your name on it, we'll probably reject it. We do get there every so often. You'd probably be surprised at what people actually upload, including things like drawings belonging to their children. I suspect they've just uploaded it and thought they'll come back to it later on because they don't have a document, and then they forget about it. So check everything, make sure that it is actually what you want us to see.
Just one question about that. What about like a letter from the medical school that's got like university letterhead on it saying that yes, you are anticipated to graduate at the end of that year? Is that the same thing?
I guess we would accept that. It's probably easier just to get a transcript off the net when you're online. Yeah. Anything that we just want to know that yes, you're a medical student, you're going to graduate this year, and that things are really good. If you are an international student, we also want a copy of your visa. That's really just to see that you've got you are eligible for a visa. There's nothing that says you're not going to get another one and those sorts of things. If for some reason you don't have a current visa, which is really more a problem for the Monash Malaysian students, then we just ask for a copy of the most recent one you had again to see that there are no issues with you getting a visa. If you're an international student and you're offered a position, then the hospital will sponsor you to get a visa, a 457 visa for that. And anything related to special considerations that you want to, tell us why you should be considered in a special case. All your documents must be either Word documents, PDFs or JPEGs. We don't accept any other sort. They must be less than 2 megabytes in size. And you only get a single document you can upload for each section. So if you need to put in 2 documents for residency, for example, you will need to just put them together into a single document. Might be just by pasting them into Word and saving it as a Word document or something like that. If you go to the website, there's some tips on how to do that sort of stuff, how to reduce the file sizes, those sorts of things. You'll then need to submit your application. You'll be asked to review it, to accept the terms of use. I strongly suggest you read the terms of use, even though none of us ever do. Enter your security code if you haven't done it, that was sent by email, and then submit it by the application closing date. We don't accept late applications. Again, last year we had someone who tried to start their application about 10 minutes before closing time. When the system closed, they got kicked out, and then they complained about it. You will need a bit of time. You need to make sure you've got the documents together. Don't leave it to the last minute. Once you've submitted it, you won't be able to make any changes except to your contact details, and I strongly encourage you to keep your contact details up to date. We correspond with you mainly by email. If your email address changes, you will need to let us know. If your phone number changes or your address changes, go back into the system and fix it up, because the contract will be sent to that address when the LHN gets your information. We may phone you, we do send reminders by SMS, when we've made offers. If you haven't actually accepted your offer by the time you need to do that, we do send reminders. So keep information up to date. We go through every application and physically check it, that it's complete, that you're eligible, that you provided documentation that supports what you've said. If for some reason you provide the application is not complete, you provide false or misleading information, we may in fact reject that application. So don't try and get around things. When it comes to the allocation, what happens is we go down in order of those priority groups. So we start with category 1.1, local Commonwealth supported students. We look at what your first preferences are. If there are more first preferences for a particular local health network, then we undertake a random allocation using a computer algorithm to determine who gets offered those positions. We then, after that, once those people accept or decline those positions, we keep going through that process until such time as we get to the end of the year and there are no more people pulling out. This is an ongoing process undertaken in order of applicants' category group and their preferences. You will be offered one position only. If you decline that position in South Australia, you will not be made another offer. So you either accept it or you decline it. If you've received an offer interstate and you want to decline it, that's fine. But remember, you won't be made another offer in South Australia. You can't come back and change your mind. The offer will come out by email. You will need to make sure that you check your emails regularly once we start making offers, because you will only have 48 hours to accept or decline that offer. And it is a single offer. Yes.
So, going back to that, so you only made one offer, so say like 85 people offer the RAR and 60 do it, and in that 48 hours, are you still eligible to be at the RAR if you get offered the QEA? The other network?
Sorry, tell me again.
So you're saying you're only offered one thing?
Yep.
And say you wanted to go to the Southern network, and then you got offered the RAR.
Okay, so if you didn't get your first preference?
Yeah, and then some people don't go back there.
We don't go back and we don't say, okay, well you got your second preference, positions now come up in your first preference, and we don't go back and then offer you that. The offer is a single offer for whatever it is. Another question?
The offers come out on different days in different states, and if you're applying to different states and you've only got 48 hours to accept an offer in South Australia, but say for example...
I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
There is agreement that offers will commence on the same date across all states.
But not in if you're in a different category in a different state, then...
Yeah. So I'll get to that interstate offers in a minute. I've got a bit of information on that. We've got a bit to that. Up with that.
Yeah, a lot of students, especially in 6th year, undertake overseas rotations, and it's times where a number of us would be overseas when offers are made. Will there be any allowance made for people who might actually struggle to access email within 48 hours of an offer being made?
You will need to make sure that either you can access your emails or that someone close to you can access your emails to check whether you've been made an offer. So there is no allowance made for it. It's 48 hours, and that is also agreed nationally across Australia that everyone will do 48 hours. If we do longer, we actually will not get through everybody. We're still making offers into November, and if we give people a longer period of time, we will not get through all of the offers, and come March or April, we'll still be trying to work it out.
Is there any sort of, will we know in advance, like when at least the first offers are?
Absolutely.
So you sort of know ballpark if you're going to be there?
You'll know exactly what day it is. I'll tell you. 14th of July is when offers commence. Okay.
So can I just clarify?
Sorry, I can't hear.
That's okay. If you're a Category 1 applicant and you have for your first preference a network that's not oversubscribed, are you likely then to get that network?
Yes, so if there are less applicants for a particular network than there are positions, then there's no randomisation, you will just be offered that network, yes. Keep going. When you come to accept or decline the offer, you need to go back into your account, you need to accept or decline online within the time frame. Once you accept it, at a point down the track, not straight away because we wait until there's a reasonable number of them and things are fairly stable, but a point down the track, usually around September, we provide your information to the local health network that you've been accepted that position to. They get all of your information, they then do the contracting process. If you decline the offer, we won't make any other offers to you. If there is no response from you, despite us sending you a reminder and things like that, we'll assume that you are going to decline it and we won't make any other offers either. You can at any time after accepting an offer withdraw your application online. You can also go back in at any time and check the status of your application. Once you've submitted your application, it'll say pending approval. Once we've checked it and looked at it, which may not be had straight away, it will say approved or words to that effect. Once you've been made an offer, it will say an offer has been made. Once you've accepted it, it will tell you what the status of it is. Question?
Yes, what's the situation regarding sections of the alphabet? Are those issues being sorted out, or are they still?
There are 26 letters in the alphabet. So 3 years ago, there was a server upgrade that caused the randomisation to not work as it should, and what happened was it allocated people in order of the order that they had been approved, their application had been approved. Now that wasn't alphabetical order, but it did closely approximate that. That has not occurred since, and there are quite a lot of quality assurance tests that are done, including statistical analysis of the randomisation before we make the offer to you.
If there is an issue with that this year, is there pathways to remedy that? Are there...
I can assure you it won't happen. If it does, I'll probably resign. Look, I mean, we can't predict what might happen if there was some sort of problem. There is a lot of quality assurance that goes into it. We spend about 2 days from when the allocations are first made and before you receive the offer. We spend about 2 days, including undertaking a lot of statistical analysis of the offers to ensure that they are statistically random. We can't do any more than that. If there was a problem, then we would need to look at what would happen. We would take legal advice on all of those things. So we don't anticipate, and we certainly do not want it to happen. We also don't allow swaps, so if you've got Flinders, Southern Adelaide, if someone else has got Central and you decide you want to swap, you can't, sorry. That's been agreed to by all of the hospitals and local health networks. Once you accept your offer, we will ask you for some additional information. That will be what your preferred home hospital is, what your career, and that's for Central and Northern. For Southern Adelaide Local Health Network and obviously Country, Mount Gambier, there is only one, they do it as a network. For Central and Northern, you'll be asked what your home hospital is, what your career direction, your career pathway you think might be, and your rotation preferences. They are provided to the LHN and that's what they use to then determine your rosters and the information that they will then provide to you later on. The LHN will provide the contract, but it may not be till quite late in the year. Typically it's not going to be till September or October. The employing body is the LHN, it's not us. So if you want to have questions about your contract, it's the LHN you'll have to contact, not us. There is also a backfill process for people who do not get jobs. So people are continually pulling out of positions because of interstate offers and things like that. So there are some people who are not actually able to finish their final year when they expect to by the end of the year. There is a lot of movement that occurs up until about October and November, and then a small amount of movement that occurs after that. So there's a backfill process for managing these vacancies right through up until Christmas time. There's also a national vacancy support system that can be put in place if it's required. The other thing that happens is that there are national audits done of applications and acceptances, and this is really to identify those people who may have applied to multiple states and territories, and there is nothing to stop you applying to other states and territories as well as South Australia. If you originally came from New South Wales, for example, and that's where you prefer to do your internship, by all means apply there and also apply here. If you just rather go into state for a break, for a change, then apply there as well as here. If you obviously were more likely to receive the offer first from South Australia, so accept that offer. Then when you receive an offer interstate, if you do, accept that offer, decide which one it is within a short period of time that you really want to accept, where you're really going to do your internship, then go and withdraw from the other one. So if you receive an offer from South Australia first up, receive an offer from New South Wales 2 months later, and New South Wales is where you really want to go and do your internship, then just go back online to our system, withdraw your offer from South Australia. We will then make that position available to somebody else who's not yet been offered a position. There's no problem with you accepting, applying for multiple positions. There is a problem if you hold on to those positions for any length of time. There is a national audit, I'll come back to you, just hang on. There is a national audit, there are 5 or 6 national audits that occur every couple of weeks through this period, where we identify all those people who have accepted multiple positions. They are contacted and they're given 48 hours to decide what they're going to do. If they don't decide within that time, then all positions except the first one they were offered will be withdrawn from them. It's part of the terms of use, it's one of the reasons you should read them. It's part of the terms of use, and all states and territories have agreed to that same process. Question?
Sorry, I'm sure this is something that comes up year after year. It's probably got something to do with the national difficulty in terms of congruence and things like that. But if I say I accept one here, and then I accept one in interstate and then withdraw, that position that I held, is that going to go to someone that wanted to be at that health network but didn't? Or is that going to go, so it's, when you accept the U12 offer, it's like, I would like to accept this but still be considered for my higher preferences. That doesn't apply like
No.
this.
So we will, if you withdraw from that position, we will offer that to the next person that in order of category, intern category, priority group, and if need be on a random basis.
But who hasn't already accepted?
Who hasn't already been offered a position. Yeah. Another question?
So say if you get allocated to the northern or the central network, and then so you're saying you're going to ask us for what our preference of hospital is and our career direction. Will that actually be taken into account, or is it a random allocation?
When it comes to the hospital,
Yeah.
it's going to depend on how the network decides to do that. So Mitra said that for central, it will be done again. If there is one hospital that's undersubscribed, then those people will automatically get it. And one hospital is oversubscribed, then it will be done on a random basis. Now, Northern last year did it in exactly the same way. I presume they will probably do it in the same way again, but I have not heard that as yet.
Sorry, subsequent to my question.
Maximum 3 questions, you realise.
I know, it may seem like I'm attacking, but is that like, it doesn't seem to be the fairest option, and I understand that it's not going to change for us, but is it sort of, is there steps in process to make it sort of this, I accept this but wish this will be considered in the future? Or like,
We have considered it, we haven't put it in place. It makes it a lot more complex.
Yeah.
And we also want to see a distribution of applicants from different categories across the LHMs, because we think that's a good thing for the healthcare system and also a good thing for you as interns. So some data from last year. We had 787 people who commenced an application, 735 of them actually finished their application and submitted it. 630 of them were eligible, so there were 105 those applications were not eligible either because they were incomplete, they withdrew beforehand, or in some cases they had applied even though they knew that they should not be eligible. We often get people who are graduates from overseas universities, international graduates, attempting to apply. We have a number of things built into the system that should kick them out along the way, but sometimes they get around that, Or the other thing is a lot of them were probably around English language requirements. They hadn't met those requirements. Of those eligible applications, 236 of them were local domestic, so Commonwealth supported from Flinders or Adelaide Uni, which was about 95% of all the graduates. So there's about 5% of people who choose not to do their internship in that year following graduation. 160 interstate domestic applicants, 26 of them did Year 12 in South Australia and thought they might want to come back. Of those 160, only about 15% of them actually ended up coming to South Australia. But the problem is, and this is why it takes so long to do the allocation, is we need to offer them a position all the way, all of those 160 a position. And when you can see you've got 236, and last year we had 270, this year we've got 278 intern positions in South Australia. By the time you've offered those 236 and all of them accept in the first instance, you're left with a small number of positions and a large number of applicants that you're working through. So even those 160 interstate applicants, most of them did not accept the position. You're only offering 40 and then 35 and then 30 and you're down to 10 or 5 positions at a time that you can offer. And so it's reliant on them then withdrawing and other people withdrawing as other interstate offers come out. 33 local internationals who applied, which is about 73% of the international students here in South Australia. Positions that were filled, that's the number of positions there were across the networks last year, 278 positions in total. And this is how the offers and the preferences ended up at the end of last year. So you can see that 88.5% of applicants received their first preference. There was only one applicant who received their fourth preference and a small number who received a second or a third preference. I'll let you look at that for a little while. What I can tell you is that last year we offered positions to all of our local graduates, both domestic and international. I cannot tell you if the case will be the same this year. I expect there will be a similar number of intern positions available, and we know there are similar, slightly more graduates. What we don't know is what the interstate applicants, what impact will have on that. And if we had a lot of interstate applicants who applied and accepted and came here for positions, then that would create an issue for you as international students. But I cannot predict that at all. We can only just wait and see. And I know that creates some angst and anxiety and all those sorts of things like you heard a couple of people talking about, but there is nothing we can do about that. It is likely that if you're an international student, an offer will not come to you until probably September-ish before we start making offers to international students if we are able to. The dates. Applications open on the 9th of May. All the information is on the website now. You should go to it, you should have a read of it. Applications close on the 6th of June. We don't accept late applications. And offers commence on the 14th of July, and that's a nationally agreed date across Australia. Even if you're in the same category group, you may receive an offer at a different time to that of your peers. Especially in the first instance, we will let you know that we are starting to make offers. But if you don't receive an offer in the first round, don't panic. It just means that we've made offers to those who have been able to give their first preference to first, and we will come back to you and we'll start making offers. And if you're a category 1.1 who's guaranteed an intern position, we will make an offer to you, but it may not be on the 14th of July. It may be a few days after that. And there's no way of determining when we can make an offer to you. So just lastly, a couple of tips. Take responsibility for yourself. Keep your contact details up to date. Make sure you get applications in by the time and accept and decline by the stated date. You may not get your first preference, so consider all of your preferences. And remember that, as has been said a couple of times, an internship at any of the LHNs will enable you to meet the requirements for general registration. And that typically people, wherever they do their internship, say they had a great year. You heard what the Mount Gambier guys were saying, that it was actually a fantastic year for them, even though it's not where they wanted to go. Lastly, we won't give all of you your first preference. I can just about guarantee that, or it's very likely. But don't take it out on us or our staff. We're doing what we can to give everybody a job, as many people as can have a job. There is nothing we can do if you don't get your first preference. And do you really need your mum or your dad or your lawyer to ring up and plead your case? Every year we do get it, but it doesn't change anything. So just think about that as well. Information on the website, we've got a Facebook page, we've got a Twitter feed. We don't make offers by Facebook, but we do provide updates and information by Facebook, so come and like us. If you don't get what you want, we won't be offended if you unlike us later on. It's not a lifetime commitment. It's just there for the purpose of internship, so that you can receive communication just another one of the ways. Happy to take any questions if there are any, or you can go home. Question?
I was just wondering, if you've got your second preferred network, are you as likely to have your preferred base hospital?
It's likely to be random again, so there's no tie up with what you've got there first or second.
Yeah, sorry, so what I was trying to clarify was, even if it was your second hospital network, it's not as someone who had it as a first preference. Okay.
Well, Central won't be taken into consideration, and Northern didn't take it into consideration last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is there another question over here somewhere? No? Excellent. Best of luck. Wish you all the best.